Hi, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Divided Films, the podcast where we talk about movies that audiences and critics do not agree on. I am JJ, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Keith.
Hello. Wanted to give it that Jack Black feel.
Yeah, exactly. Trying to tune into your inner rocker. Very appropriate. Speaking of rockers, we have a first-time guest today. Our good friend, our rock and roll friend, Ryan Tomczyk.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on the podcast.
Good to have you on, man. I thought you'd be perfect for this movie because you are a musician. You're a very skilled and talented guy. So I thought you'd be a perfect fit to talk about this week's divided film, School of Rock, starring Jack Black. This movie falls into the category of having a positive score with critics with 92% approval and a mixed score from audiences, 64% approval. So that's 28% difference, pretty significant. And the Rotten Tomatoes consensus on School of Rock, Black's exuberant, gleeful performance turns School of Rock into a hilarious, rocking good time. Very brief consensus there on that one. So what do you guys think? I mean, Ryan, I think you mentioned this is like a revisit for you. You hadn't seen this in a long time. I know I hadn't really seen it in a long time. I don't know if it's like, I feel like this is the kind of movie that kind of bordered like, is it a classic? Is it not? I'm not sure. But I find it interesting that it's divided because 92 is a pretty high score from critics. I find that to be interesting. And, 64% seems more of like an expected response from audiences than I would think. But what do you guys think? What was your history with this movie? And, where do you think you're siding with initially? Start with Ryan.
I mean, I'm not surprised that it's divided because it's a pretty tropey, dumb movie. Kind of, it's like the whole Jack Black doing things, yeah, like.
Yeah, classic Jack Black sort of thing.
When you said the score from critics, that kind of surprised me. Like, in my mind, like, I went into this remembering, like, oh yeah, it's a fun movie, but it's, like, not good. It's not, like, really breaking any boundaries. It's not doing anything special. It's, like, very tropey and, like, simple, but, I mean, I always liked it. Just the wholesome teacher that, like, wants the kids to rock and all that. It's, pretty cool.
What do you think, Keith?
I think, right, okay, I was kind of shocked when I saw the audience score. It's 5 points away from being a rotten. And I'm reading these reviews, or some of these reviews, and I'm like, okay, I know comedy is subjective, taste is subjective. I think I love this movie. Granted, it's been years since I've seen the movie in its entirety, like a long time, and I probably caught it on like Freeform or on something here and there, but I know this movie's tropey. I think but this is the movie that's what made Jack Black. This movie was tailor-made for him. Literally, it was. But it's like, I don't know. It was perfect. It was a perfect vehicle for him to become like a breakout star. And it was, I don't know. I feel like a lot of people's, okay, maybe except Jim Carrey's, but like, Robin Williams had Miss Doubtfire. That's tropey. I don't know. I kind of went in with we can dissect this movie. I love it for its tropes. It works. The cast works. The writing works. I don't know. I really enjoyed it. Maybe the critic score is a little too high, but I don't know.
I'm wondering how soon after this movie did like Pick of Destiny come out?
Oh, good question.
I was kind of upset to see that like Kyle Gass, the other member of Tenacious D, didn't like have a little cameo or anything like that.
That would have been nice, actually, now that you mention it.
Was that pre like Tenacious D? Like, did he kind of break out from this movie and then kind of jump onto that afterwards, or was that before? I really don't remember.
I believe the original Tenacious D, they had like, I don't know, a short run on like HBO or something in like the early 2000s or late 90s, and then but that was like more of it's minor success. I think they had their following for sure, but it wasn't a breakout hit. And then yeah, then this movie comes out. Jack Black, I think, was also in. I mean, I know he was in a bunch of other movies in like the early 2000s, and this maybe was like what really was his most like popular hit in terms of like people generally liking it. And then I think Pick of Destiny comes out like mid 2000s, and by that point, people like Jack Black is what made that movie more successful because he had been more of an established household name. So, you know, him being in these other movies gave him the opportunity, I guess, to bring more life into Tenacious D, because that wasn't something that I knew about until high school, maybe like almost 10 years after the fact. For me in this movie, I find this, I'm going to probably be in between you guys on School of Rock. I think it's good. I think it's fine. I don't think it's, something that is a landmark movie in comedies or anything, but for what it is and what it's doing, I think it works. It's fine. I don't know if it's necessarily a script that would be made today, because nowadays people only want to make like the biggest movies, and this is such like a mid-level kind of movie that is they're not going to promote for like weeks and weeks and weeks, but people who do get to see it will have like a fine time. And there certainly was. And it'll be fine. They'll enjoy it. They'll have a good time. They want to have the best comedy experience of their lives. But for what they'll see, from what most people see, they'll like they'll be glad they saw it. I'm glad I did, but it's not something I went back to really too many times afterwards.
It's a very solid 6.
Yeah, I'm kind of
feeling an Applebee's afterwards. Like, it's not gonna be great, but it's gonna be
a great time in suburbia.
To me, it's a little bit more than a solid 6. I mean, I'm trying to think of like other people's like breakout movies, and I think Jack Black, and you brought this up before, but Jack Black was always kind of like a working actor. He wasn't like Jack Black. He was in like Neverending Story 3.
He was in the third one. Yeah, that's
he was a bully in that, but he's always been like the tech assistant in The Jackal. He was like during the 90s. It's like his biggest role in the 90s was High Fidelity as the supporting character, and then he got Shallow Hal. And he wasn't Jack Black. He wasn't the Jack Black there. And I think this movie was just kind of Jack Black unleashed. Like you got to, he has it. I don't know what it is, but he has it.
I think he established a similar character that he's in this sort of slacker rocker guy in Orange County. I think he played but in a more supporting role. And,
underrated.
Yeah, okay. I knew that would be one that you'd vouch for. And then in Shallow Hal, I think that's the first time that I really, as a kid, had seen, or at least it was established for me, him, this like star actor. And I don't even think that's a movie that everyone really gets on board with either. That's kind of a divisive movie as well. You kind of take it or leave it.
That movie would never get made today.
It definitely would not. So take it for what it is. In this movie, yeah, Jack Black is the star, and his energy level is like perfect for this. But I think where the divide comes from is not everyone really likes that Jack Black energy, whether it's in a supporting role like Orange County or Shallow Hal or some of his later movies he was in. It's for some people it can be a little too much. I think from a lot of the audience comments I read, they're just not fans of Jack Black. So of course you don't like Jack Black, you're not going to like School of Rock. But if you like him enough, then you will like this movie because there's other things in play in this movie that balance him out a bit. I feel like because he is such a force, like so many other really big, energetic comedians like a Will Ferrell or Jim Carrey, you need other things in play, other plot elements or characters to balance it out. And for me, that's where the kid characters come in. And there's what I really like about this movie is how they flesh out all these different student characters. So it isn't just like one big crowd of students. Like there's an actual interest in the kids. And so I buy when the Jack Black character, his arc, he actually starts to learn more about these kids and care about them and become more selfless. So in that very basic sort of, character development, it works and I buy it.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Okay. Teach. All right, look. Here's the deal. I've got a hangover. Who knows what that means?
Doesn't that mean you're drunk?
No. It means I was drunk yesterday.
The kids are great on it. It took me, like, I wrote notes down on my phone. I was really doing some research last night when I was watching this. And just in my phone, because just in all caps, it's Miranda Cosgrove. Like, I completely forgot she was even in this movie. Like, the ensemble of kids, while some are a little weirder than others, like, the designer, the very flamboyant young child.
Yeah.
I don't know if we could do that.
Yeah, he was more of a stereotype than a character.
Not many of the others were. I guess like the groupies, which was like a really weird thing
Oh,
to be
yeah, yeah.
labeled. I mean, Jack Black is like very wholesome and sweet, but at the same time, he's doing this just for himself.
Right. Well, that's what it starts out as, right? It starts out as
That's the
like,
entirety of it, almost. Because like I don't know if we just skip to the end, but when they like do like the final show or anything, it's like all about him crowd surfing, living vicarious. It's not like him trying to live a vicarious dream through these kids. He still wants to be the main character in that dream.
That's true. I guess there are other gestures of him being selfless, like the fact that they do the song that was written by the guitarist instead of his song that he wrote, which is like this vindictive song, like, you should have kicked me out of the band. Like,
You're not hardcore. You're not hardcore.
can you imagine like listening to a guy sing a song about how he should not have been kicked out of his band? Like, that would have been kind of weird. But you know, that gesture of him doing their song that they wrote, you know, he gave the kid, he has his own guitar solo, and the kid has a guitar solo, the keyboardist has a solo, you know, he gives everyone a little moment in the sun there. So I think that's where some of that selflessness comes. Maybe they could have driven that a little more, and I agree the crowd surfing thing is kind of like a little contradictory to that, but for the most part, again, I buy that he's becoming somewhat less selfish as the story goes on.
Well, there's that, but I did have to note, and this movie is kind of in that comedy realm that you can nitpick and don't. I guess if you don't focus on the nitpicking, you can enjoy it. But the life lessons and the confidence boosting that he gives to these kids is all through like his selfishness.
That's
like,
true. Yeah.
The singer, he's just like, okay, you are beautiful. You can sing. Can we get on stage? It's like, okay, we need a keyboardist. You're cool, man. You're the cool. Like, if you really kind of want to look into it, it is like he doesn't like snap out of it until his rock bottom, which isn't. Faces the minimalist consequences for his actions, which I'm not. It's not that I'm not okay with, but it's, I don't know. On the scale of like where Doubtfire, he should be in like prison. Like, it's, I don't know. It's like one of those comedies where it's just like, don't think about that. Don't think about that. Enjoy the ride.
That is what I was thinking too. The consequences he faces, I'm accepting because it is a movie. It is like a family comedy, and it is in that sort of vein. You don't expect him to go to jail. Maybe like, you know, I think a minor encounter with the police, I suppose. But I will go along with it because we've seen in other movies that, you know, we're living in a world with very minor consequences with this kind of filmmaking. So again, I buy it. I don't think I really question too much in this movie in terms of plot, because it is very simple. I think little things like, you know, even though they soundproof the classroom, people should probably be hearing that there's a rock and roll rehearsal going on every day in this classroom, things like that. Or I thought it was pretty funny when he is like pretending to teach, and it is like the most bullshitty teaching I've ever heard. Like, as soon as the principal walks into the classroom and he's like, and therefore E equals MC squared. It's like, what?
The Nina. What's the other one? The Pinta. Last one, A1. Santa Maria, right. Good job. Write that down. Like,
on the chalkboard, there's just like complete nonsense on the chalkboard. There's like question mark times exclamation point. It's like, what? I just love how, like, again, that's, I think, to the movie's credit with comedy, just like the most BS type of, like, you know, trying to get away with teaching that I found pretty funny.
I could have sworn this was a Nickelodeon movie.
It kind of feels that way.
They played it on Nickelodeon, I bet.
Well, yeah. I actually do think they did. I'm sure Jack Black was nominated for a Kids' Choice Award for this
Yeah.
performance. And it's Paramount, right? So that's like the same company. And again,
Yeah.
Miranda Cosgrove, she, I believe Drake and Josh might have come out the same year as this movie. So, yeah, her career was taking off. I don't know if she was in really too much before this, but, she was in this, and for me, even I recognized her. So, I think there's definitely a connection there with Nickelodeon for sure.
And that's what makes Jack Black a little bit interesting, because he was a member of the 2000s Brat Pack, or Frat Pack as they call it, like the Will Ferrell, Ben Stiller, Owen Wilson, Vince Vaughn, and Jack Black was a part of that too. He pops up in Anchorman. They've done stuff together, but Jack Black was always kind of like the Nickelodeon Choice Award winner. Like he did, Kung Fu Panda made him an absolute like international star, and he did his Tropic Thunder. That's one of the all-time great comedies for me.
I love Tropic Thunder.
And then he does movies like Goosebumps and Jumanji, where he's kind of like the comedy legend Jack Black. So Will Ferrell and Ben Stiller are not doing they're doing some kids movies, but their comedies are not kids movies. Meanwhile, this one is more family, Nickelodeon. That's why I'm like, once I got that sense that this is a Nickelodeon movie, I was like, okay, I know what kind of movie this is.
Well, also it has the stakes of a Nickelodeon movie, I would
Yes.
say. Like I can imagine this with the orange VHS and being in the same sort of vein as like a Harriet the Spy or something like that, where
That's a
basically the story isn't like this. Like what are the stakes? Like this guy just wants to perform at Battle of the Bands with this class of kids, and that's basically it. And you get the very School of Rock scene. Like there's the montage and everything, or like, oh, history of rock and this and that. It's very much done in like what you expect to get, you get, and it's not like the stakes are super high. In terms of Jack Black's later career, I agree. He kind of is now like more of a supporting actor in a lot of things, as opposed to like a lead actor in comedies, which I think suits him better. Again, I think he's better when he's more balanced out. So in Tropic Thunder, he has Ben Stiller, he has the rest of that ensemble, Danny McBride, and then in Jumanji, he has it. So basically, he's kind of more of a featured actor, which plays better to his strengths. So I'm glad he's still doing stuff, because again, when done correctly, when casted correctly, I think he works really well.
I completely agree. He's not as much like the leading man rom-com type person, like say like Shallow Hal. He's a lot more of like that kind of character actor, and he does those very well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but are we going to talk about because I paused on this for a second when they're doing that whole rock montage of like the genres and like bands in the genres, that whole like wherever you call it, that like word bubble. But I mean, granted, it was like very big. It went all the way up to like rockabilly and like all this stuff, like strange punk things. When they did like heavy metal, that was my only qualms. It's like you didn't put like Metallica up there, Megadeth, Slayer.
They do have like Metallica in the soundtrack, and I believe in somewhere in the apartment there's maybe like you know what, in the car he has an Iron Maiden like bumper sticker in the car. So there are definitely like references to heavy metal, but I agree it's probably like the subgenre of rock that's referenced the least. I think he also mentions Motorhead, which like I'm not as familiar with. I don't know if they're metal.
I don't know if he mentioned them. I think he might mention them as metal. Motorhead, to me, that's like a very, I guess, it kind of gled on the side of metal, because it's like pretty like loud, kind of hardcore, but it's like mostly punk to me. Like,
Gotcha.
Like, that big song, if you like to gamble, I'll tell you how to win. It's like very like just driving. Like for me, that just like straight up like hard ass punk, not like metal, because they're like, oh, Judas Priest is metal. Like maybe a little bit. When I think about like some of the metal that existed back then as well, like Meshuggah or something like that, or who are like hard ass, scary kind of metal. I'm like, what do you?
I doubt they would have mentioned that band in this movie.
They needed you on set, Ryan.
Like I'm just like his word charts, and I'd be like,
I mean, I appreciated that there was definitely a love of the rock genre in this movie because they're mentioning it's more of a focus on classic rock. You can tell like when he's assigning music for everyone to listen to, you know, it's like The Doors, The Who, Pink Floyd, those kind of bands, which is like fine, right? Obviously Jack Black is a huge fan, even like in his own like personal life. You can tell he's very much influenced by like, you know, the rock and roll history and specific kinds of acts. So from both the writing point of view and Jack Black's point of view, it's like this is kind of like a rock homage. And maybe even for kids who are watching this movie, this is like a rock 101. It like for me, I grew up with classic rock because that's what my dad listened to. But then also like this gives you like an even deeper window for any kid who's interested in that genre. So, you know, School of Rock, you know, for the characters and also for the audience. There you go. Were you gonna say something, Keith?
No, I they needed you on set, Ryan, to do that bubble.
I mean, I don't know if I'm like really that qualified, honestly. I mean, someone like Jack Black who's played in actual much bigger acts, I guess we'll get stages, D being the biggest one. He has a lot of that, but whenever I saw that whole chart thing, it just let me know very much like, oh yeah, he's talking about like 70s, 80s kind of stuff, like his band being more like in the glam glitter rock kind of like, you know, Kiss or in some ways.
Oh, AC/DC.
You're not getting
AC/DC
hair
was,
metal.
like a big reference.
Oh, he comes on just the last show on the full ass AC/DC outfit, like the schoolboy thing with like the shorts.
Yeah, Angus Young. He's totally channeling him, and it's like okay, like that fits in with the School of Rock band, like with the kids and everything. But that is like a straight up Angus Young look. So I got a kick out of that. I mean, you could tell like he's also like I don't know if any other actor could be in this movie because you know Jack Black actually is a musician too, right? So I don't know if this movie was written with him in mind, but I imagine if not, he was certainly the first choice.
He was Mike White, the writer, who has I think he currently put out White Lotus. I haven't watched it, but I've heard good things. And he was on Survivor, but he's been in screenwriting for a while, and it's always good to see his name on stuff. But
He was on The Amazing Race because I watched.
He was
that
on
season.
both.
He was on both.
Yeah, he came in third place on Survivor. I hope he's listening because I really enjoy, and because White Lotus I've heard amazing things, and he lived in the same. He wasn't roommates with Jack Black, I believe. I remember, but he was like, you know, in the apartment across or next to him. So he really got to know Jack Black, and I think when he was writing this movie, he had Jack Black. I think Jack Black was wild. You know, I read that he would run down the hallways naked. Like he was like, I need to put this persona into a movie. What is the perfect vehicle for that? And it's and I think having Richard Linklater, who I think was pretty interesting. I didn't know. I always forget that he directed this movie, but they wanted real life musicians for kids. They were like the kids could also had to play the music, and they. I don't know. Jack Black, you could feel the mentorship on set. Yeah. I guess in hindsight, because of every like anniversary, these kids come out of the wood. Or these, I mean, they're our age. I think this movie hit so hard for us or for me because we were the same age as these kids.
Right. Like it was. I looked into a lot of these kids were born in like 92 or 93. So yeah, like very relatable.
Yeah.
We were pretty much like the target audience for that. So I get you. Like it was kind of like one of those things where, you know, our generation could definitely connect with it. And you know, the actor, I mean, the screenwriter's in the movie. He plays the roommate and, you know, the pushover roommate. Ned, he plays the real Ned Schneebly. Which is like the dweebiest name ever written into a movie.
But he still looks exactly like someone who would be named Ned Schneebly.
He does. I'm curious if he knew he was going to be in the movie, or if like the casting was like, who could play this part? We need a really dweeby guy, and then they look over at him and they're like, maybe you could be in the movie.
I mean, and one thing I just want to say, he's in the movie dating Sarah Silverman.
Yes.
And like she was so underutilized. Like I'm annoyed that she had to play such a tropey, just like, I'm the doubting girlfriend. You need to go. You need to pay rent. Meh. Like,
I agree. I like one of my qualms with this movie is that you put it perfectly, like the underutilized Sarah Silverman. She is such a hilarious comedian, and you put her in this movie and give her nothing funny to do. Like, why even cast her if she's not going to be in a comedic part? Because basically, like, anybody can play this role of the bitchy girlfriend who just ruins everything for everybody. And I don't even care how she's written either, because it is very one-dimensional. So I didn't really care for the character itself, and especially the casting of Sarah Silverman in a role that just wastes her talent.
Was she Sarah Silverman at that point? Like, I know, like she was 30 years, because this movie's now coming up on 20 years old. And so she was maybe like our age now. And I know she's been doing stand-up in her 20s, but I don't think she was Sarah Silverman yet.
Did she have the show yet by then?
No. That came like maybe later 2000s. Maybe like a Bill Maher appearance here and there, because, she was on the New York comedy scene. But, who's perfectly...
She had been doing some things. She'd been doing some things here and there. Like she had a one episode appearance on Seinfeld.
Oh yeah,
in the late 90s.
I'm not then again, she wasn't Sarah Silverman. She was Jimmy Legs.
She wasn't, but there had to be some people who knew she was funny by then.
Well, of course they probably knew she was funny, but they were probably just trying to see where
she played a perfect bitch.
And also, she plays a very good, very convincing bitch. I guess it was like she's probably doing that stuff because this movie is 2003.
Yeah, that's true. It's like just to get the role, and
it's like the bigger thing to actually get into the room with like these directors and all that business, and then they can actually see what kind of person she is. So like, at this point, I don't think she was like Sarah Silverman yet.
Yeah, that's a good point. I guess we hadn't realized, or it wasn't widely known yet. I'm sure like inner comedic circles, I'm sure knew how funny she was, but that wasn't widely known yet. I mean, she was actually in, I'm aware of one other movie she was in before this, a very obscure comedy called Screwed with Norm Macdonald and Dave Chappelle.
I think I've seen this one.
I think
Danny DeVito's
in it. It's got a great cast, but it's a terrible, terrible comedy. But she's in it, and she's, I think, a little funnier in that than she is in this. But same kind of thing. She plays the girlfriend who like disapproves of the plot, basically.
They hate me.
No, they don't.
Yes, they do. They sure do. I can see. I wasn't always like this, I wasn't always wound this tight. There was a time when I was fun. I was funny. I was. But you can't be funny and be the principal of a prep school.
Now, she might be underutilized. But you know who's perfectly utilized in this movie?
Joan Cusack.
Joan Cusack. I think she is kind of like the star. Like she's a breakout performance in this movie, just as much as maybe not as much as Jack Black, but I love her in this.
She's great. I mean, she has been typecast as the spaz.
Yes.
In basically everything she's in, but she's really good at being a spaz.
She spazzed it the hell out in this.
I do like her in this. I actually really, I actually cared about her character and what she goes through. Like, I understand where she's coming from, especially in the scene where they go to the bar and she like her weakness, I guess, is Stevie Nicks, and the pressure she faces from these uptight parents. So I buy all that, and I think that could have been a more forgettable role. But Joan Cusack is a very memorable actress. So she elevates that performance and therefore like the movie as well. That's another example of someone else balancing out Jack Black because she's a great foil to his character.
Yeah, part of me was surprised that they didn't even try to go for like a relationship-y type thing, because I feel like in some moments, like at least in the bar, that could have been a moment in the movie where they could like go down one or two paths. You know,
I think, and
I'm glad they didn't.
Yeah.
But
I think if they went for like a different kind of tone in this movie, that might be the area they went to. But considering I think that they were playing it like very PG, I think they wanted to like not really make that into a thing. I don't know if I would have bought that. I could definitely see a scenario where another screenwriter makes that a plot point of a potential romance. But I'm glad that they didn't go there because I feel like it would have been a little forced, right? I can see them maybe having a friendship after, and yeah, I guess they don't really show any sort of ending to that character's arc. You could maybe have seen her like escorting students into the new School of Rock at the end of the movie, like as a way, you know. But at the end of the day, she probably got fired because she let this imposter like teach students for 3 weeks, and then also they went missing under her watch. So
I love how like I know the parents all filled those like that stereotypical like I'm angry trope, but I love that a good song can completely change their hearts. Like even Joan Cusack is like, I am mad, but you guys were so good. And I'm like, oh, the ending for this is good times were had by all. Like, you know, don't worry about any like he doesn't even get a misdemeanor or like like any penalties or anything.
right, no jail time, no consequences really.
I was gonna arrest you, but that hook was really tight. Like,
Exactly.
hell yeah.
I think there's a life lesson in that. Rock stars get away with a lot.
Well, even I thought it was funny how uncaring that the ticket guy was at the Battle of the Bands. So all these parents are like, our missing kids are here. And he's like, I don't care. You need a ticket. It's like, Jesus, dude. Like, can you imagine a desperate parent? Like, my missing child might be here. Well, you got to pay up to find out.
Well, he was warned.
Like,
He was warned once. He let his friend in, and like that would be a third strike, and he doesn't want to lose that gig.
They could have easily stormed past him, but instead they're like, fine, let's buy tickets.
That scene though made me laugh. Like maybe it was like Joan Cusack. He's like, you know what? How about we just buy a ticket?
What? No, those tickets are probably like $40. So
Any kind of
Also,
Battle
like,
of the Bands pay-to-play thing, yeah. Gotta get those pre-sale tickets.
That song.
yeah, man.
Buying them in advance, $15 at the door, and it's like at a
Like-
dumbass place in Howell, New Jersey.
This was filmed in New Jersey, right? I saw that in the end credits.
Rahway.
It filmed in Rahway and
Yeah.
Edison.
Wait, where
Yeah.
did they film it in Jersey? Like what?
I saw in the credits the towns that were mentioned were Rahway and Edison.
Okay.
So, you know, I mean, I guess it kind of looked like that centralist Jersey sort of area, maybe like right outside
The
the city.
school was New York
So,
though. The school was like I think like upstate or maybe like I read that
like a
Yeah, I think
Westchester
so.
or something.
But that song, look, you're at. I mean, I've been to a few of these type things in high school for friends' bands. If a guy came out with like his class and they actually did that song, they're winning. I go for the gimmick. I don't know why this band. I know why story wise that his old band won, but that song sucked that they sang.
I saw in the credits too. So the name of the band in the movie is No Vacancy, and then in the credits they credit the song to the band No Vacancy. So I thought to myself, oh, is this a real band that was just playing like in the movie as themselves, and they're portraying themselves as jerks who kick out Jack Black, understandably so. And they do establish in the opening scene that Jack Black is this really annoying band member who is always stealing the spotlight and causing problems during their performances. So and they set it up pretty believably. We're like, yeah, they're kicking this guy out of the band. He should not be in this band right now. And they just rub it in at the end. I like the name too, No Vacancy. I think that's a good band name.
So is that a real band?
I need to look into that if it was, because like I said, they credit them. I guess maybe they never made it since 2003. Like their biggest gig was being in the movie School of Rock.
Yeah, they should have joined the School Rock World Tour. That would have been a fun thing, you know.
They could have warmed up for the band as like the bad guys who get booed off stage.
This next band stinks.
What?
Boo, No Vacancy.
Yeah, people are basically yelling. Count the vote. Like they feel cheated. Like, wait a minute, we all voted for like I don't even know how they voted for this.
I think it's like judges. I don't think the audience votes. I think it was like a panel of judges who decide the winner. That's, I assumed, how it goes down. But either way, the powers that be decide that the mean band wins, and the School of Rock full of kids, they got to go home empty-handed.
But they learned a life lesson along the way.
I think one of my favorite kids in this was the Freddie Jones character. Not just he's a drummer, because I used to be a drummer back in the day, but yeah, he definitely seemed to have the most like rock and roll personality of them all. Even like in the beginning when he's giving like sass to Jack Black and stuff, I thought like, okay, this kid is like definitely more identifiable than the rest.
Yeah, he had that punk vibe for sure. I liked him a lot too. He definitely looks like a kid that just be like listening to like the Sex Pistols and AC/DC.
Yeah, he definitely was. He was more of like the punk kid. I mean, when he went into that van with those like older men, I was actually very scared. I'm like, oh Jesus, like this is why you don't bring kids to like these kind of places. They're gonna wander off.
Or members of that band were like, oh, here's like a small child. Let's go hang out and smoke cigarettes and drink beer around this small child. Like,
yeah, and play cards and stuff. We're just hanging out with them, man. Relax.
a band or just like a bag of like vagabond vagrants or something. Like, if I was ever like playing a show or anything like that, and I'm like out with my bandmates and like we're all like smoking, drinking, just hanging out, doing whatever, and like a 10-year-old came up and was like, "Oh, hang out with you guys," I'd be like, "You should go. Where's your mom? Like, go see your mom."
It's like, absolutely not. We are not going to be drinking with a 10-year-old.
He's wearing a wire.
He's a wire. He's a narc.
The kid's wearing a wire. Like the minute you offer him like a cigarette or something, the sirens go off.
But that's another scene. That's another scene of development for the Jack Black character. He actually is like more like an actual teacher. Like, you had me worried sick, young man. It's like, okay, Jack Black, you're growing in this scene, but this is also completely your fault.
Yeah. How dare you take advantage of the weird, bad situation I put you in?
Yeah, exactly.
You should know better. For me to throw you in a dumpster and expect you not to get dirty, like, what?
Yeah, that's exactly the scenario. Oh, that's hilarious.
No, I thought all the kids were, like, I don't know, there was a good chemistry. And, like, there was one line at the parent-teacher meeting where it's like, why is my daughter obsessed with David Geffen? And I, of course, no kid's going to get that. But now, like, with years of just music knowledge, and it's like, oh, I appreciated that joke as an adult. And I thought Miranda Cosgrove, I know we brought her up before, but I thought she killed it, and I could see why she has the Nickelodeon it. Like, I know iCarly's back. I think iCarly missed my it's like a 5-year kid. People 5 years below me know that show.
iCarly was basically just as our generation was getting out of Nickelodeon, or like maybe a few years after. So yeah, we obviously missed that train. That wasn't like that was.
We
like
got
right
Drake and
after us,
Josh,
which is fine. Exactly.
But I thought she was great. I actually, one little tidbit that I found out during all this is like these kids do still kind of connect. Like they had at least a 3-month-long summer band camp basically with Jack Black as the leader, and he kind of. And I said, like, there's definitely, like, mentorship. Like, every 5-10 year anniversary, they do get up on stage and recreate it. But 2 of them are actually dating. I found that out. Blondie and the bodyguard kid. I don't know what his nickname was. But I found that. Okay. I'm kind of, like, I'm rooting for, I don't know. There's something, I think, as corny and as tropey as this movie can be, I think there's so many good elements to it that rose it above to make it. I don't think this movie was supposed to be the success that they anticipated. I'll say that. I don't think they were anticipating a Broadway musical or like a staple in the zeitgeist of the 2000s. I don't know. I don't think.
Yeah, that's fair. As much as maybe I haven't really gone back to this movie, I've always remembered it. I never forgot about this movie. And there are a lot of movies that have faded into obscurity over the years. So yeah, to its credit, it did stay in people's minds, and it stood out. And I agree. I think it was way more successful than they thought it would be. Maybe they just thought they'd make a little chunk of change on this, again, like fairly small family comedy. And I think at the time it did make a much bigger splash. Again, not a mega hit, but certainly much bigger than maybe anyone had realized it had potential for. So that's, again, to the movie's credit. And again, I think Jack Black had a bit of that star power to do it. But again, there's just like there's like a goodness to this movie that is infectious. Again, like no one's really going to jail or facing any consequences. It's like a fantasy, basically. Imagine, especially from a kid's perspective, that you're going to school and all of a sudden this rock and roll guy takes over your class and you spend 3 weeks learning how to be in a rock band. I mean, that's like a fun fantasy for any kid, really.
Yeah, no, I'd watch this movie and think to myself, like, I wish we had a teacher like that. I want to just play guitar all day for class.
Do we wish we had a teacher like that in real life? I don't know. But Jack Black is, I can see how he is someone who does appeal to kids, with his physicality. I mean, something that stuck out to me in this movie is that his hair is like a character in and of itself. I mean, his hair has so much like motion to it. It is like moving on its own so much. I just love these shots of him from the back when he's like just kind of rocking. His hair is shaking back and forth. I don't know why I find that so amusing to me, but his hair.
He was serving looks.
He was, and it's funny when he starts at the school. It's like it's combed as best as he can comb it, but then after a while he just is letting it go wild again. And there are times, especially after he's shaking his head, like he looks like a crazy person, but in a really hilarious way.
This is the first time I'm saying this on the podcast, but props to the wardrobe department on just Jack Black. I mean, on everyone, but just to Jack Black alone. Like his teacher, hair slicked back, but his the long scarf. Like he look like there is that that Angus King element even in like a regular classroom.
Yeah.
One thing though about his wardrobe, I don't know if it was on purpose or anything. His jeans could not have been like more loose. Like he was like, cause I'm watching with my fiance, who was a fashion designer, and she just saw like his outfit and be like, "Those jeans, my dude." Because if you look back on it, they're just like. They just make him like a rectangle.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I guess from the top, he's like wearing like more fairly suitable like sweaters.
The tiniest bow tie you could ever see, though.
Yeah. And then I guess after that, once you get to the waist, it's like whatever from there. Which I guess
the corduroys.
Right. I think that's more of a testament to the character, right? It's like him, what he thinks he needs to look like at this prestigious school. But not putting as much thought into it as he should is like misconception. Because at times when he first walks in from the top up, he looks like he thinks he's going to be teaching at Hogwarts or something.
Your new defense against the dark arts teacher. Hit him with the hair.
teaching spells through rock and roll to defeat
Wingardium
Voldemort.
Leviosa.
Perfect.
No, it's not Leviosa. It's Leviosa.
Expect to betray him.
They also have a lot of this Jack Black thing he does where in his deliveries, he will just pick a random line where the last word he will scream. Like, I'm trying to think of a specific example of that, but like something like, "You guys, you're going to make me lose my mind." Like something like that where out of nowhere he will just overemphasize the last word of a sentence. And I kind of like that myself, but I can tell that's another thing that audiences, people who don't like Jack Black, that is an example of something they don't like.
The last line in the script was in italics. I have to scream it.
Yeah. Well, like that's him, right? That's him, like just kind of like on a whim, kind of like going with what he's feeling. Or I feel like from interviews I've listened to with Jack Black, like when he's been doing certain podcasts and explaining his comedy style, I think that when he's maybe feeling a lack of energy, he will do that to try to reinvigorate energy into whatever scene he's doing. So that's like, something, maybe him trying to read the scene, and it's a very like on the moment sort of thing. It's very like impulsive. So I dig that, but at the same time, it's not always necessary. Like he's not always reading that like correctly. You don't always have to like jolt a scene back to life with like a random yell. But I think it worked.
I wouldn't be surprised if every take was different.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. He's a guy who definitely is in the moment when he's doing the scene. Like he's really living it. And again, he has this impulsive nature to him, which works for this. It's infectious. But when it's not kept in check, it's overwhelming.
3 minus 4 is...
-1.
That's right. And 6 times a billion is...
6 billion?
Nailed it. And 54 is a 45 more than what is the answer, Marta?
9.
No, it's 8.
Did anyone else get goose? I got goosebumps at the end of the song. Like their final song. I don't know. I was like, oh man, I don't know. I enjoyed. They rocked it out. I know this is like a kids family movie, but it's it is what it is.
Well, also, I mean, it's a nice little wrap up where they have the school at the end, and this is what he's going to be doing with his life from now on. I guess they have the School of Rock, and this is what they'll do with their lives now. But at the same time, in a real life situation, parents obviously would have a restraining order against this guy from ever going near their kids again.
Yeah, no, everyone should have been arrested. The doorman, accessory to a crime, because he's keeping these parents away from their children. Like, oh, there's missing kids in here. I don't think so. Ticket, please.
Oh, you know who else is a really funny female comedian who is like just randomly in this movie for a hot second? Amy Sedaris is in this. She's just the lady who's like, children, where are the children? And then she's like running through the hallways. That's Amy Sedaris. I recognize her voice from a mile away. I recognize
her.
And she's
I didn't think about it.
She's just randomly in this. Just for a hot second. She's like, where are the children?
I don't know if that was supposed to be like a little Easter egg or something. I guess probably at the same time, maybe Amy Sedaris wasn't as big as she is now. But another example of like, you had Sarah Silverman and Amy Sedaris building this movie, like...
Yeah, they're not doing anything funny. Yeah. I mean, she was Amy Sedaris. In the same year, we'd see her just a few months after this movie in Elf. And again, not a very funny role, but she is in that. So like, I think the same kind of thing with Sarah Silverman, where these actors are just taking these parts and building up their resume, and eventually we'd see them blossom into like the full potential.
I didn't. Good catch on Amy Sedaris. I did not recognize, or I wasn't even thinking about that. But I think with both Elf and School of Rock, I think it's just, I love Amy Sedaris. I want her on set. Hey, can you do a date? We got a part for you. It's not she was kind of already established in some capacity with Strangers with Candy, but I think she's so respected in the comedy community where it's just like, hey, and she's definitely a New Yorker. You can always, every New York comedy or movie, she finds her way in it. I mean, she's in The Mandalorian. Yeah. Her and Jon Favreau are really good friends. So I think you just like to have her on set, and she's a great supporting actress.
Well, she's just as like a very. I wouldn't even be surprised if her little cameo there was uncredited. Yeah. But it goes back to the same thing with Sarah Silverman. If she was based in New York at the time, and again, I'm sure she was her style was well known within the comedy world. So someone like brings her into this, whether it's like Jack Black or someone else who knows about this project. So it's kind of interesting to look back and see where actors got their start from and where they eventually wound up. Because again, I think that's like not uncommon either to have your comedy with your main star who's the vehicle, but then you give like other aspiring actors little bits in the movie, like to get their thing going, and then they can the chain or the cycle goes on.
I think it's tougher to do in a movie like this, or at least like 90% Jack Black, 10% Joan Cusack. Anyone else is just there to keep the plot going forward, filling that trope of this character. And if they can get maybe one line in, that's great. And Miranda Cosgrove, like the kids itself, yeah.
The kids have some moments of comedy, but again, that's kind of like feeding off of what Jack Black is doing. So when he's doing like the guitar thing and he gets like the math wrong, people are responding to like his stupid math questions, like 3 minus 4. It's like -1. Like, what are you doing?
Richard, this is so different than an Adam McKay comedy where it's just the plot is like there's a outline and there's a script, but Step Brothers and Anchorman is like, oh, even like Catherine Hahn as like the assistant gets like everyone is a comedian. Like no parts too small for
in that movie
for these movies.
I think what really made these like mid 2000s comedies work, and this is I'm going to put like School of Rock, even though it's a different style of comedy geared towards a more family audience, is that it's centered around the characters rather than the situations. And so, you know, Jack Black is handled correctly, and I find his character endearing in this, especially with the growth. So in that way that it works. Whereas for me, a lot of comedies in like the 2010s were more about the situations, and that's why I don't really care for them as much, and I'd rather go back to these 2000s comedies. Okay, I'll say one more thing. So, you know, it's interesting that this has such a high score with critics, you know, 92%. And I think that just boils down to the fact that it is like a good, solid comedy. There's not a lot of reason to give this a negative score. So that's why it's at a 92. And like, you know, 92 might be higher than a lot of very like critically acclaimed movies that we think are doing a lot more innovative filmmaking. But in terms of like, you know, that goes back to why you can't really compare movies to movies score by score. This movie on its own by itself might get a 92 because for what it's doing is very good. Like, you know, for the plot to execute and all the elements that are there, it lines them up very well. There's not a lot of reasons to not recommend this movie or to say that you shouldn't see this movie. So that I think that goes into the 92%.
If you want to rock, you got to break the rules. You got to get mad at the man. And right now, I'm the man. That's right, I'm the man. And who's got the guts to tell me off? Huh? Who's gonna tell me off?
Shut the hell up, Schneebly.
That's it, Freddy. That's it. Who can top him?
Get out of here, stupid ass.
Yes, Alicia.
You're a joke. You're the worst teacher I've ever had.
Summer, that is great. I like the delivery because I felt your anger.
Thank you.
You're a fat loser and you have body odor.
So with that being said, I think we can like wrap up here and give our final thoughts and scores. So let's start with Ryan. What are your final thoughts on School of Rock, especially as a rock and roller yourself? And what percentage score would you give this movie?
Okay, well, I mean, I love this movie. It's like really sweet, just the whole giving kids a chance to like rock and do all these cool, fun things. Like as a musician myself, I like it a lot. I wish I had a teacher kind of like that. It's not, objectively, it's not like a good movie. Like it's not going to win any awards, but kind of like what you're saying, it does exactly what it's meant to do, and it does it quite well with like some great characters. So I'm on the side of the critics. Like I'd give this like a high score, like 8.5.
85%. 85%.
I suppose, like, it's great. It's a fun movie. I had a good time watching it. I enjoyed it.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever. It's not groundbreaking, but
yeah, but every movie has to be, you know, like some movies just want to be like a nice like night out for the family, and I think this is fitting that bill.
it's the Applebee's of movies.
Maybe, I mean, what's a step higher from Applebee's? Chili's?
Fridays.
Fridays? Okay. It's a very good chain restaurant.
You're gonna be happy. Nothing's great, but it's fine.
Yeah. What do you think, Keith?
If you're gonna write a movie about the School of Rock concept, I think this to add on to both of your points, this movie does it in a great way. I think it excels in a great way. I think if you wanted to make a movie about where a teacher takes over a class to make a rock band, how else are you going to do it? This is the way to do it. And Jack Black, this was the perfect vehicle to make him a breakout star, comedy star. More family-oriented, but still a breakout star nonetheless. I can't tell you when the next time I'm going to watch it is, but I know when I'm actually like sitting down to watch it, I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to give it an 88. I think it deserves its place in the 2000s comedies.
Fair enough. I can definitely see this movie being a favorite of a good chunk of families who did maybe go back to this a bunch of times. You know, they got the DVD and sat down together every now and then to watch it. So I do think it's like good quality family entertainment. And for me, I would give it Like, I'm feeling an 82%. I think we're all, like, in the same ballpark here. Very solid for what it's doing. And, you know, if people rediscover this movie down the line, I think they'll like what they see. So, Keith, I believe we're, like, what's the exact score? I mean, it's like an 80-something, right?
Right on Ryan's number, 85, which is perfect.
Ryan, you're the center of our universe here with your score, so congratulations on that.
Thank you. I'll take my prize. I will take this podcast as my own now.
Oh, okay.
You win a dividey.
You're hijacking this podcast like Jack Black hijacks that elementary school class. So that's very appropriate. So we expect to be full-fledged rock stars by our next episode. So I officially decree that on School of Rock, we are siding with the critics. Thank you, Ryan, for joining us for this episid.
Yes, thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, this was great. Next time we have, I mean, it doesn't have to be a rock and roll or musical movie, but, you know, next time we have a movie that I think is right up your alley, we'll give you a call out and get you back on here.
Yeah, it'd be really fun.
So thanks, everyone, for listening, and tune in again for another Divided Film soon. Thanks a lot. And if you wanna be